Every papacy begins with gestures that speak before words. They are often quiet, deliberate, and easily overlooked. But they carry a language of their own. They tell us not only where the Pope is going, but who he intends to be. And for Pope Leo XIV, those first gestures are already drawing the outline of a vision. A papacy that looks backward in order to move forward, and that bends down to the wounds of the world before climbing any throne. A sign from the East. The first of those gestures came in Rome, in the solemn calm of St. Peter's Basilica. There, Pope Leo laid his hands on the head of Archbishop Miroslav Wachowski, ordaining him as the new Apostolic Nuncio to Iraq, a country described by the Pope himself as a land marked by pain and by the desire for rebirth. It wasn't a grand diplomatic appointment, it was a spiritual one, because in the Church's language, a nuncio is not simply a diplomat. He is a bridge. And in sending a bridge to Iraq, Pope Leo was extending the reach of a church that does not abandon her margins. Archbishop Wachowski, a Polish prelate, born in Pis, trained in the service of the Holy See, has worked in Senegal, Poland, Vienna, and most recently in the Vatican's Secretariat of State. He carries with him the discipline of diplomacy and the simplicity of prayer. He chose as his episcopal motto, Gloria Deo, Pax Hominibus, glory to God and peace to men. That, the Pope said during the homily, is not just a motto. It's a life program. Because the mission of every bishop, and especially of a nuncio, is to make visible God's glory and his desire to reconcile the world to himself. Then came the line that many missed, but none should forget.
In Iraq il popolo ti riconoscerà non per ciò che dirai, ma per come amerai.
The people will not recognize you by what you say, said Pope Leo, but by how you love. That was the first seed, the sign that his pontificate would be less about institutions and more about incarnation, less about policy and more about presence. A journey announced, and now comes the second gesture, louder, global, impossible to ignore. The Holy See has announced that from November 27th to December 2nd, 2025, Pope Leo XIV will undertake his first apostolic journey outside of Italy. The destinations, Turkey and Lebanon. On paper, it looks like a regional trip, but in the language of the Church, geography always hides theology. The journey begins in Turkey, for the 1700th anniversary of the First Council of Nicaea, the birthplace of the creed that still unites all Christians. We believe in one God, the Father Almighty. It will end in Beirut, the wounded city by the sea, still scarred by the explosion of 2020, still living through crisis and division, yet still home to one of the most ancient Christian communities in the world. And between Nicaea and Beirut, between the memory of the Creed and the ruins of hope, we begin to see the logic of Pope Leo's early pontificate unfold. Nicaea, remembering who we are. 1700 years ago, bishops from across the known world gathered in that small town in Asia Minor, today called Iznik, to settle a crisis of faith. The Church was young, still fragile, and deeply divided over the nature of Christ. And yet, out of that turmoil came the Nicene Creed, a confession so clear and so unifying that it still echoes in every Sunday Mass. To mark that anniversary, Pope Leo will return to the very soil where that confession was born. He will pray near the ruins of the Basilica of St. Neophytos, where early Christians professed the same words we still say today. But he will not come to celebrate the past. He will come to ask what it means to believe together now, in a time when unity is again fragile and the temptation to divide truth into tribes is stronger than ever. Meeting with the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople, Bartholomew I, and leaders of other Christian communities, the Pope will extend a hand across the centuries, back to the moment when East and West were still one. It will not be an academic commemoration. It will be a prayer for the future, that the Church might once again breathe with both lungs, as John Paul II once said. Iraq, fidelity in the fire. But remember, before this journey, a seed was already planted in Iraq, the land where Abraham first heard God's voice, the land where ancient Mesopotamia met martyrdom, and where, in recent decades, Christians have suffered persecution, exile, and silence. By sending Archbishop Wachowski there, Pope Leo signaled something fundamental: that the Church must never let the suffering edges of the world disappear from her conscience. In Iraq, the Church is small but luminous. Her faithful pray in Aramaic, the language of Christ himself. They rebuild villages destroyed by war and care for families displaced by extremism. Their witness is quiet, yet it carries the gospel more convincingly than any speech. Pope Leo knows that the credibility of the Church in the 21st century will depend not on how she argues, but on how she stays. And the new nuncio, with his quiet fidelity and missionary heart, is being sent precisely to stay. To love a wounded people in the name of a Church that remembers them. Lebanon, hope among the ruins. When the Pope lands in Beirut on November 30th, it will be more than a diplomatic visit. It will be a pilgrimage to a symbol, the symbol of a country where Christianity, Islam, and many traditions have lived side by side for centuries, sometimes in tension, often in dialogue. Lebanon has been called more than a country, a message. But that message is now strained. Economic collapse, political paralysis, and the trauma of the 2020 port explosion have left deep wounds. Many young people are leaving. Many families are losing faith in institutions, in the future, even in God. And that is precisely why Pope Leo's presence matters. At the shrine of Our Lady of Lebanon in Harissa, he will meet bishops, priests, and religious men and women. The heart of a Church that refuses to give up. He will pray at the tomb of Saint Charbel, the hermit of silence and miracles, a saint who reminds the world that holiness still grows in hidden places. Then, in the very port where so many lives were lost, the Pope will stand in silence. No speeches, no fanfare, only prayer. That silence may become one of the defining images of his pontificate, the Pope before the ruins, facing the world's pain, not with power, but with presence. Finally, he will celebrate Mass at the Beirut waterfront. The closing act of his first journey beyond Italy, and perhaps the opening act of his pontificate's mission, to unite faith, fidelity, and hope in one gesture of communion. Reading the signs. Seen together, these three places, Iraq, Turkey, Lebanon, form a kind of spiritual geography, a map of the Church's wounds and her callings. Iraq is the Church of fidelity, remaining amid pain. Nicaea, Turkey, is the Church of unity, remembering who we are. Lebanon is the Church of hope, believing that love can still rebuild. And together they express the first theology of Pope Leo XIV's pontificate, a papacy that does not begin with reform or controversy, but with presence, prayer, and dialogue. He seems to be saying, before we fix structures, we must rebuild hearts. Before we debate doctrines, we must remember why we believe it all. This is not a papacy of slogans. It's a papacy of listening, not a papacy of reaction, but of rootedness. In his short time on the throne of Peter, Pope Leo has shown a calm, deliberate rhythm, a desire to move the Church slowly, deeply, and with purpose. And in that rhythm, the first notes are being played in the East, where faith was born, where it has suffered, and where it must rise again. And just after I finished recording this video, the Vatican released the official logos and mottos for the journey. For Turkey, the theme will be One Lord, One Faith, One Baptism, and the logo shows a bridge over the waters, a sign of dialogue between East and West. For Lebanon, the motto comes from the Gospel, Blessed are the peacemakers. The image shows a cedar and a dove, symbols of faith and reconciliation. It's a visual confirmation of everything we've been saying. This papacy is about bridges, peace, and the rebirth of unity. So what might this all mean for us? For Catholics watching from a distance? For believers wondering what comes next? Maybe it means that the renewal of the Church will not begin in Rome, but in places like Baghdad, Nicaea, and Beirut, where faith has cost something, where hope has been tested, and where love must become flesh again. From the Creed of Nicaea to the cry of Beirut, from the diplomacy of the Nuncio to the silence of the Pope at the port, a new story is beginning, one that looks less like a program and more like a pilgrimage. And in that pilgrimage, we may just be seeing the first clues of a new papacy, one that believes the Church's future will not be built on control, but on compassion. Not on fear, but on fidelity. Not on division, but on the courage to love. If these first signs of Pope Leo's pontificate speak to you, share your thoughts in the comments. What do you see emerging from these gestures? Do you believe this could be a turning point for the Church? And if you know someone who loves reading the signs of the times in the life of the Church, share this video with them. Don't forget to subscribe to Catholic Snack for more reflections like this one. Short, thoughtful, and made to feed your faith.